everybody, it's Jeremiah. I'm going to talk about conscience. It's probably one of the most important things I'll talk about. Again, I apologize for the chickens in the background, and normally I like to do these videos at night so the noise isn't there, but I certainly hope you'll be able to hear everything over them. Conscience is so deeply beyond being a part of us that it's both a part of us and it's a part of reality on a level that we are not conscious of. And I'll be very plain with this. What's wrong with this world right now, everything that's going on everywhere, and even the people who are killing in the name of God, all of these people have a very... Well, let me just skip the people part. Everything that's wrong with humanity is a lack of conscience. That's how insensitive the raw human being that was born with all the potentials of humanity there in their person, all the potentials of everything that they could become and be as a human. It's all been destroyed by a lack of conscience that we have finely tuned. All the different choices that we make in this world, every single one of them will be in some way impaired, impairing, impactful, or inspired by conscience. And the people who have living hearts are so rooted in conscience that they're sensitive and empathetic and conscious of others. But people that don't have a conscience cannot distinguish right from wrong. They may have a practical knowledge of what is right and what is wrong, as the world has demonstrated to it in teaching, but they don't have that built-in living part of their person that is able to sense that it's wrong, or that sensitivity is so quiet from all the years of making choices that are directly against conscience that they've lost the ability to even be swayed in the slightest by conscience. And when I say conscience, I don't mean a regular sense, but a sense that is beyond being human, and a sense that is required to actually be human. And that's a harsh way of wording it, but it's the only way I can word it, because so much is just wrong with people that you really cannot, I'll just say, sugarcoat the truth of it. People that are out hurting animals or hurting children or religiously murdering people, they all lack a commitment to conscience. Consciousness of itself is nothing. That's a machine. That's like the camera in front of me. It has, let's just say, an optical sensor. It can hear, or it can smell or taste or feel. It can see, and it can be impaired, and it can be heightened in its senses, but that is nothing. Absolutely nothing. And that is one of the reasons that so many people, I don't want to say struggle with suicide, because that's actually a little deeper than to say what I was about to say. But lack of conscience is what makes us incapable of personally and universally being sensitive to what's right on a level that is outside of technicality. There's a lot that's right, and there's a lot that's technically right. There's a lot that's wrong, and there's a lot that's technically wrong. And we all have to distinguish and interpret what's technically right, technically wrong. But what's personally wrong and what's personally right is probably always going to be what is universally right and what is universally wrong. And that's something that we're not aware of outside of being alive with a conscience. Being aware and being conscious isn't the same as having a conscience. And I really have to be careful of how I word a lot of this, because I am very, very deeply, profoundly passionate of my angers toward what is wrong, toward what people do, to what they do to animals and children, and in the name of God. And I will just very quietly say that I am so infused with rage that it baffles every sense of logic and heart that I have. And so I have to stray from being, I'll say, stimulated in those avenues. But conscience is what allows us to sense what is morally right, morally correct, wholly true. It is what connects us to living truth. It is why so many people have no sense of meaning, no sense of purpose. And I have struggled with that myself. And on the other hand, the same thing of not having a conscience, if you flip that around, being overly sensitive with a conscience will also press a person to suicide. And I think that has always been my problem, is that I'm so aware of what is going on in this world. And people like to say things like, oh, you don't know what's going on in the world. I am so extremely sensitive to what is going on in this world that it is impossible for me not to be. My conscience is heightened, I'll say. I don't want that to sound holier than thou. That is not what I mean, but I mean to say that I'm a bit more sensitive to it because I'm aware of its existence, and I'm aware of its mechanics and the aspects and dynamics of it, and they're infused in my living person, in my personality, in my consciousness, so that it's not that I run from a conscience, it's that I endorse and embrace one. And it has so extremely frustrated and impaired all of my senses, because it can exceed natural sense. It can exceed natural understanding. It can exceed all understanding. And in a split second wipe out everything that is typical of human thought and heart and awareness and conscious normality. But to get back off of me here, and I do apologize for that, but I'm talking about things that are in depth with my person, and they are my beliefs, my feelings, and so it's very hard to not weave in and out of my personal impressions regarding trying to explain things personal, but at the same time a little bit impersonal, so that the information, which I hate to call it information, but the relative sense that I have to these things can be expressed without being so completely the art of my being, if that makes any sense. I mean, it's one thing to have art on the wall and you're looking at it, and it's another thing to be involved in the creation of that art. And conscience, to go in a place I wasn't really going to go, is really, when you get to the interpretation of it, which is a slightly different thing, that is the art of your person and the art of your life. It is what impresses your heart when you're looking at a rose, or glorifies your eyes when you're staring at the full moon on a bright night. But the raw sense of conscience is the distinguishing factor between what lets a child grow up and be not a success in the world, but a success in humanity. It is what brings someone to a cause. It's the reason why one person stays in their house and another person comes out to help someone. It's the very nature of human existence, in the sense of a non-religious and non-traditional existence. We are all capable of having a conscience, and we are all born with one. You can argue over ages and accountabilities and all of that, but animals have conscience, humans have conscience, and we all have a different sensitivity to it. But the bottom line to all that is human is conscience. It is what connects us to all that is spiritual. It is what connects us to all that is meaningful. It is what actually gives our life the applicable sense of direction. We can chase things all day long, and we can even get them and, be happy for a moment. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if our conscience is not satisfied, then we will never be satisfied. We have to do what our conscience tells us to do. And it isn't that our conscience is telling us what to do. It's that our conscience is what we have to do, because it's who we really, really are. And there's two sides to that. There's who we are in relation to what is right and wrong and true and holy and exceptional to all existence. And then there is what is right and holy and true and exceptional to all existence. And both of those are interwoven, but not interchangeable. They're married in their relationship to one another. And that can take you in many religious directions if you want to, but the very nature of spiritual existence is married to a conscience. When you go to technical religion, there's no conscience. It's all technical right, technical wrong, do this, do that. But there's no true interpretation. It's like somebody giving you a sheet of paper and saying, follow these directions. It's like the Ten Commandments on a basis of tactical direction instead of the commitment of our heart to truths that are outside of our person, so that while you can call them 10 Commandments, and there's a lot more than that, but It's really what is right for our person in its existence to be spiritually associated and married and connected and in love. You can't practice what they call the commandments really without love. And I would say, in a direction I hadn't even thought of before, they are the embodiment of love. They really are. If you were to dissect conscience, you'd find love. And if you were to dissect love, you'd find those commandments. It's not that we're told to do these things. It's that I think it's Deuteronomy 19. I set before you life and death. See to it that you choose life. Anyway, what I was going to say is life would be that love, those commandments. And that love is what empowers conscience. You cannot have conscience and go around hurting people. A little bit of slang there, sorry. You can't go around hurting people, hurting animals, doing wrong on such levels that you know it's going to impair someone's heart. Because true love, if it's really in you and it's given to all of humanity, all the reasons that we came up with religion kind of depart from love, but love is the bottom line to everything given to us that comes from God and holiness. And that true religion, not all these technicalities, I don't want to say it's based on, but is born from. True religion is alive. It's a life. It's a unanimous spirit. And love is the water that lets it grow. We have our personality and we have our interpretations and we have a lot of room of freedom and liberty, but love is what allows us to, I don't want to say facilitate, but to grow. And to grow lively, alertly, and in great, marvelous sensitivity to such holy truths that are always going to be outside all of our spheres of perception. That's what makes them holy, because they're not truly in any way ours. But what makes them true religion is that they become ours in our relationship to them. And I could go for hours on that, so I'm going to try to pull away from that right there. What I was saying is that you can't harm the heart with a living conscience in you. You really can't. You have to decide to put aside what is holy in order to do the things that people in this world do to people. You cannot rob someone. You cannot murder someone. You cannot beat a child. You cannot do these things without impairing your conscience. Not impairing it, but denying it. And I am strongly, I'll reset that thought there. I am for us having beliefs. And I am for us learning who we are in God. And I am for us having a personal interpretation of that. It's our right, it's our liberty, it was God given to us. But I am absolutely against and set against every human being on this earth who thinks they have an authority to kill someone on the basis of a difference of opinion. on the basis of believing in a living God, but not the technical things that you do. And there's so much I would do that is wrong because of that indignant aspect of my heart. And I really wish I could apologize for that, because my heart says it's right to avenge and to exterminate the enemies of life and the horrific, I'll just call them soldiers, because that's what every one of them sees themselves as, is a soldier. All these horrific people in this world who cannot preach a living God without preaching death by judgment, their judgment. The living God gave us life equally. If he wanted us dead, he has the power to kill us. But you could argue that if the living God wanted to teach us truth, he wouldn't send us people like me or other people who are impressed with love and conscience and life and spirit. He'd send us the people that kill people. Why not? So who does God send? Who does hear God? Who does preach truth? And what is truth? Without trying to be punful here, let your conscience teach you the voice of God. Because no matter who's talking to you, anytime somebody says it's the voice of God, you're going to laugh and you're going to believe it's a lie. Doesn't matter who it is, you'll believe it's a lie. Now, if they've got like 100,000 people saying, hey, this guy's got the voice of God, or this girl's teaching in the name of God, you might actually give them some credit. But you know what? Your credit is meaningless. It's your heart, your conscience, and you have got to learn the voice of God your own self. It's got to be in you, or it's not from God. It's got to be in your heart. It's got to be from outside of existence. It's got to be holy. And if it is not holy, guess what? It's not holy. So anyway, I will let that go. Thank you guys for checking this out. I apologize for the ranting and babbling, and I certainly apologize for my chickens in the background. And as always, God bless.